Alright everyone, welcome back. So this is a little bit of a different video here. I've made a video like this before, but now that we're under new terms and there's a new team coming to the NHL, I thought I'd make this video again. So 2 years ago, I tried to start a video series called How To Hockey, where I tell you guys about hockey and kind of teach it to new fans. The video is in the link in the corner, whichever corner it is. It'll be there right now. I'll put a photo of it on screen. But since there's a new team coming to Salt Lake City, I do want to make this video again because even though this team's relocating and not expanding, they're going to a market that doesn't have a lot of hockey history. They don't have a lot of teams. They have some good minor league teams, but there's a lot of new fans and a lot of new season ticket holders that are coming from either, the Jazz or Ryan Smith, or they just like hockey, that are coming to this. So I figured I get them into some of the terms and some of the other things they need to know when it comes to learning about hockey. So we'll start off with some of the basics. I'll start off with the positions. That's kind of, I think, where we should start out. So positions kind of go as follows. You have the center, who's the one who takes the faceoffs. You got the two wingers, who are on each side, to the left wing and the right wing. You got a left defenseman and a right defenseman. Each are assigned to kind of defending their own portion. And then you have a goaltender, who obviously tends the net. So that should be pretty obvious there. I don't even think you really need to know hockey to kind of know that kind of stuff. There's obviously 3 20-minute periods in the NHL. Obviously, if it's tied after those 3 periods, the game will go to overtime, then later on a shootout. Those are kind of basic things that a lot of people know. You don't even need to really get into hockey, but if you didn't know them, there you go. The two most common things that I see when people are getting into hockey, and even when I'm talking to people, they always ask me, what is icing and what is offsides? And I think it's definitely something that kind of it's a little hard to explain, but I put it into very simple terms here for you. So offsides, we'll start with offsides because I feel like it's easier, is when a player crosses into the offensive zone without the puck before another player on his team crossing into the zone with the puck. That is considered an offsides. The reason why it's really there is because had offsides not been there, then you could just have one player camping in the other team's offensive zone and just waiting for essentially them to come in and score. You could just be waiting in the other zone for as long as it takes. The offside thing kind of eliminates that scenario and gets the game more moving fluently. And it also does create for a much fairer style of play. Icing is a little bit different. It's a rule that some people think are stupid. It makes sense, but a lot of people don't like it. Icing is when a player shoots a puck into the opposing team's zone before crossing the neutral zone red line. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is that a rule? It does it to get the game moving faster. Now, that rule, the icing rule, actually doesn't apply on a power play. If we're on a power play, actually that rule doesn't apply, and you can dump it into the other team's end, and you'll keep going. They do that to make the game move faster. Essentially, what would be happening a lot is if a team's really pressuring hard in one team's zone, the other team would be able to just clear it time and time and again and run a couple of seconds off the clock. With the icing, it A, speeds the game up, and B, gives the other teams more time and more time to play, and obviously more action there too. And the funny thing is in the NHL, when you cause an icing, you can't change your line. You can't take your line off the ice and get a new fresh set of people out there. No, you have to keep your line on the ice, because that's what happens a lot of the time. Whenever you're tired, you will ice the puck. It's not a rule that applies when it comes to that. So moving into penalties, and I think penalties is another really good place to move on to here. When you're talking about penalties, there's a lot of different kinds of penalties. But first off, I want to start off with the delayed penalty, because what people don't realize is when a penalty occurs, the play doesn't just get blown dead. No. If the team that was on the victim side of the penalty, or the team that obviously didn't take the penalty, they can actually control the puck. And until the team that took the penalty can touch it, the play will go on. And the other team has a chance at scoring in the offensive zone. Now, in this scenario, usually what teams will do is pull their goalie for a few seconds and see if they can start getting something going with a 6-on-5. I even saw something that I thought was really creative was when one team was on a penalty kill, then the team that was on the power play took a penalty, and then the other team started going into the defensive zone, kind of running down the clock and running down their own power play so that they had more time on the power play for themselves. If that makes any sense, if it doesn't make any sense, just let me know in the comment section down below. I'll try to explain it better for you. But that's kind of what delayed penalties really are. There's a lot of penalties that can be called. And me watching hockey over the last 10 years, there is a lot of penalties that are called. So we'll start with the most common ones. You got tripping, self-explanatory, when you trip someone with the puck. You got high sticking, which is essentially when you high stick someone up in this area. I think it's above the shoulders is what's considered high sticking. You have hooking, which is basically putting your stick through someone's armpit, essentially. There's other kinds of hooking, but that's the main one. There's actually slashing that I realize isn't even on the list, but that's essentially when you take your stick and you whack it against someone. That is pretty much what slashing is. You also have holding. Holding is when you pretty much hold someone onto the boards, essentially. It's not like when you're in the middle of the ice and someone grabs onto you and doesn't let you go further. It's usually when you're up against the boards and they'll hold you against the boards until the play's over. There's interference, which is basically a form of hitting. I mean, there's certain times where if you hit someone without the puck, that is considered interference. There's charging. That's when you skate. That's when you charge it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's when you charge at someone from one end of the ice and hit them, and then that's called a charging penalty. You also have elbowing, which is when you hit someone with your elbow. That also is self-explanatory. The other ones are a little bit complicated. It's too many men is another one too. This is the one that I get seen like controversialized a lot with too many men. A lot of the time, like there will be some instances where there'll be 6 players out on the ice and it's blatantly obvious and it's called. But there will be other times too where, you're making a line change and maybe one player gets onto the ice a little bit too earlier before their team gets off. Sometimes they'll call that. Sometimes they actually miss it, in fact. So that causes for a lot of controversy. But again, one thing you're going to realize, and if you're watching football, you're watching basketball, any of those sports, you're going to realize that the refs are not perfect and they're not going to call everything you want them to. That's one thing that every sportsman needs to realize. There's checking to the head, which means you check someone in the head. There's checking from behind, which means you check someone in the back when they are not facing you. You also have unsportsmanlike. Unsportsmanlike can range from a lot of things, whether it's trash talking, essentially, or chirping is another term that I'm going to explain later on. There's a lot of unsportsmanlike ways that it can go. There's delay of game. Delay of game is not entirely too common, but it is used a lot when it comes to you clear the puck out of the zone and it goes out of play. That is sometimes considered delay of game. That's a weird one because it really depends. Like if it's obvious, then yeah, it's a delay of game. There's also ones too where you shoot the puck and it goes out of play, but it hits the glass before it goes out of play. That's fine. That's not called. It's weird the way some of them work. There's also a game misconduct, which in misconduct can play a role in a lot of things. You could get a 10-minute misconduct, which means you're in the box for 10 minutes. You can get just kicked out. That also happens a lot too. I've seen it happen plenty of times in games. And then there's abuse of officials. This is one that I don't see all too common, but it pretty much is self-explanatory where you're trash talking to the officials. I have seen some instances, and this is only really in minor league hockey where I've seen people take physical action against refs, physically abuse the refs. I've only seen that in minor hockey, never seen that in the NHL level. I think only because if that happened at the NHL level, you're getting benched and you're just getting banished to the dark realm. Essentially, if you do that, the coach is not going to like that. But again, there's a lot of them, and I'm probably not even mentioning all of them in this video, like goalie interference. I don't even want to get into that conversation because goalie interference is a really controversial topic. It's also used a lot when it comes to calling off goals, which, by the way, when you score, there are times where a coach can challenge the goal for whether it's offsides, whether your stick's above the crossbar, if you tip it in, for goalie interference. And there's a lot of different calls there, too. That's a whole nother realm of things we can get into. But essentially, really when you're looking at that as well, like goalie interference is just like it's such a controversial topic. There are some calls that are blatantly goalie interference that get called as a good goal. There are some calls that are blatantly not goalie interference and they get called off. It's a really weird thing, and as you start watching this new Salt Lake City team, you're gonna realize that when these scenarios start popping up, because they will, it's gonna be weird. You're gonna be thinking it's really weird, and a lot of the time it is. A lot of the time it doesn't make sense. But honestly, I've just accepted that it is what it is. So before I get into some of the other terms that I have, I think I need to show you the net. So for the net, there's going to be a lot of terms that are used in broadcast, like post and in, bar down, off the back bar. So this is a visual representation of the net right here. These the two ones on left and right sides are the post. The top red one, the one at the very top, the red one is the crossbar. And then the two ones in the back are the back bars. So essentially, it'll make more sense when I get into these terms, but I feel like I should show you guys the net before I get into a lot of the other things that I have to talk about here. So other terms that you're going to hear a lot is back-checking. Back-checking is something where essentially the team is taking the puck down into your defensive zone, and you're essentially the team that is having to skate back and play defense. If you're back-checking, you are rushing back to the other end to apply pressure on the team with the puck. So that's essentially what back-checking is. You see a lot of instances where like there are guys who will back-check and there are guys who just won't. Like there's a lot of players that I've seen over the years that just are very lazy when it comes to back-checking, or not into that, and not great defensive players. But you'll see that as things go on. Bar down's another term as well. It's pretty much when you score from the post or from the crossbar and then the puck goes down and into the net. Very self-explanatory, but I figured I'd show you the net first so you guys know exactly what bar down is. So there you go. There's also barn. I don't know who calls it a barn, but some people call the arenas in the NHL a barn, or just hockey arenas overall. Like for example, Delta Center would be the Salt Lake City team's barn. It's really weird. I get it. I know it's very strange, but it's definitely a term that is used sometimes. There's a celly, which is a goal celebration. You see this a lot. I'm sure like you don't even need to really know what hockey is to know what a goal celebration is. It's used in soccer. It's used in even football, but it's touchdowns. Basketball sometimes too. It's used in every sport. I'll put some examples up on screen. But essentially that's a celly. Chirping, I think you would know what chirping is. I think it's a term used in other sports. It's basically just trash talking. That's pretty much the watered down answer to that, but it's just trash talking essentially. There's five-hole, which is scoring on the goalie between their legs. Now here I'm going to put up a visual representation of exactly what places you can score on a goalie. If you want to pause, feel free, but they're very self-explanatory. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways you can score. There's even some instances where you score in an empty net, but obviously those are the ways you can score on a goalie. And the last thing I want to talk about here is player types. There's definitely different types of players, and I'm not even mentioning all of them here in this. You got a grinder. A grinder's a guy who doesn't have a lot of talent, but is a guy who works hard. He always works hard, brings the grit, brings the physicality, and is always a guy that works hard and, may not have like the talent like some of the other players, but definitely is a grit player. Those are the players that a lot of people tend to like a lot. Like a lot of people like to like those grit players, and they're kind of other people's favorite players. There's also snipers, like guys who just score. Like those are guys who have a scoring knack. Like for example, Alex Ovechkin is a goal scorer, or Alex Ovechkin is a sniper. Austin Matthews is a sniper. Matvei Michkov will hopefully be a sniper. So those are guys that score a lot, and they may not be guys who are like great defensively or have great at passing, but they are guys who just have a knack to score. So that I definitely think is a big one. There's playmakers, guys who can pass the puck very well. Like for example, Sidney Crosby's a playmaker. There's definitely other guys in the league who are playmakers as well. So a playmaker is a guy who passes the puck and moves the puck very well. And then finally, there's also an enforcer. An enforcer is a guy who fights. Now, I know that's what a lot of people get into for hockey, but I have some unfortunate news. The fighting is not a huge part in the NHL as it used to be. Back in the 70s and the 80s and even like 10 years ago, it did play a much bigger role, but at this time, it's kind of starting to become a little bit removed from the game. But guys that are currently in it are Ryan Reeves, obviously. I'm sure some of you have seen Matt Rempe make headlines. I'm trying to make references to the Arizona team as well, like a guy like let's say Liam O'Brien will definitely get into some fights if he stays in Arizona. When you're looking at other types of guys like Michael Carcone's a goal scorer. Clayton Keller is definitely a playmaker. So there's a lot of references you can make there when you're looking at players in the Coyotes. That's another video I need to make as well. I will be making a video, on the Salt Lake City team, like the team from the Arizona Coyotes, because I'm a Coyotes fan. I have been a fan of this team for almost 10 years. So I know essentially a lot of the guys on this team, and I can explain them very well to you, unlike what some people can do. So definitely there. If you guys enjoyed this video and you do have any questions, I understand that I probably did not cover everything in this video. This video is probably not even made that great, but I do want you guys, if you guys have any questions, to let me know them in the comment section down below. There's a lot of new fans coming into hockey when you're going to a new non-traditional market, essentially. So if you have any questions about hockey, just let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll answer them the best I can. But regardless, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe down below. I really appreciate it, especially if you're new and you're from Salt Lake City and you're getting into the game of hockey, because definitely I will be making a lot of videos on Salt Lake City over the summer. So regardless, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.